Warrior Cats Into the Wild by Erin, Chapter 10. By the following morning, a thin drizzle soaked the treetops and dripped down into the camp. Firepaw woke up feeling damp. It had been an uncomfortable night. He stood up and shook himself vigorously, fluffing out his fur. Then he left the apprentice's den and trotted across the clearing to Yellowfang's nest. Yellowfang was stirring. She lifted her head and squinted at Firepaw as he approached. "My bones ache this morning. Has it been raining all night?" "Since just after moon high," Firepaw replied. He reached out and prodded her mossy nest cautiously. "Your bedding is soaking wet. Why don't you move nearer to the nursery? It's more sheltered there." "What? And be kept awake all night by those mewling kits? I'd rather get wet," Yellowfin growled. Firepaw watched her circle stiffly on her mossy bed. "Now at least let me fetch you some dry bedding," he offered, keen to drop the subject of kits if it upset the old she-cat so much. "Thank you, Firepaw," replied Yellowfang quietly, settling down again. Firepaw felt stunned. He wondered if Yellowfang was feeling all right. It was the first time she had thanked him for anything, and the first time she had not called him kitty pet. "Well, don't just stand there like a startled squirrel. Go and fetch some moss," she snapped. Firepaw's whiskers twitched with amusement. This was more like the Yellowfang he was used to. He nodded and sprinted off. He almost crashed into Speckletail in the middle of the clearing. This was the queen who had watched Yellowfang's angry outburst at the tabby kit the day before. "Sorry," Speckletail, Firepaw mewed. "Are you on your way to see Yellowfang?" "What would I want with that unnatural creature?" replied Speckletail crossly. "Actually, it's you I was looking for. Bluestar wants to see you." Firepaw hurried toward the high rock and Bluestar's den. Bluestar was sitting outside, her head bobbing rhythmically as she licked the gray fur below her throat. She paused when she noticed Firepaw. "How was Yellowfang today?" she meowed. "Her bedding is wet, so I was going to fetch her more," Firepaw replied. "I'll ask one of the queens to see to that." Bluestar gave her chest another lick, and then eyed Firepaw carefully. "Is she fit enough to hunt for herself yet?" she asked. "I don't think so," Firepaw meowed. "But she can walk well enough now." "I see," meowed Bluestar. She looked thoughtful for a moment. "It is time for you to return to your training, Firepaw. But you'll need to work hard to make up for the time you have lost." Thank you, Bluestar," Firepaw stammered. "You'll go out with Tigerclaw, Graypaw, and Ravenpaw this morning," Bluestar continued. "I've asked Tigerclaw to assess the warrior skills of all our apprentices. Don't worry about Yellowfang. I'll make sure someone sees to her while you are gone." Firepaw nodded. "Now join your companions," Bluestar ordered. "I expect they're waiting for you." "Thank you, Bluestar," Firepaw mewed. He turned with a flick of his tail and darted toward his den. Bluestar was right. Graypaw and Ravenpaw were both waiting for him by their favorite tree stump. Graypaw looked stiff and uncomfortable, his long fur clumped by the dampness of the air. Ravenpaw was pacing around the tree stump, lost in thought, the white tip of his tail twitching. "So you're joining us today," Graypaw called as Firepaw approached. "Some day, huh?" He shook himself roughly to get rid of the clinging wetness. "Yes, Bluestar told me that Tigerclaw is going to assess us today. Are Sandpaw and Dustpaw coming too?" "Whitestorm and Darkstripe took them out on warrior patrol. I suppose Tigerclaw is going to look at them later," Graypaw answered. "Come on, we should get going," urged Ravenpaw. He had stopped pacing and now hovered beside them anxiously. "Fine by me," mewed Graypaw. "Hopefully some exercise will warm me up a bit." The three cats trotted through the gorse track and out of the camp. They hurried to the sandy hollow. Tigerclaw had not arrived, so they hung around in the shelter of a pine tree, their fur fluffed up against the chill. "Are you worried about the assessment?" Firepaw asked Ravenpaw as the young cat padded backward and forward with the quick, nervous paw steps. "There's no need to be. You're Tigerclaw's apprentice, after all. When he reports back to Bluestar, he's gonna want to tell her how good you are." "You can never tell with Tigerclaw," mewed Ravenpaw, still pacing. "For goodness sake, sit down," Graypaw grumbled. "At this rate, you'll be worn out before we begin." By the time Tigerclaw arrived, the sky had changed. The clouds looked less like thick gray fur and more like the soft white balls of down that queens used to line the nest of their newborns. Blue skies couldn't be far behind, but the breeze that brought the softer clouds carried a fresh chill. Tigerclaw greeted them briskly and launched straight into the exercise details. "Lionheart and I have spent the last few weeks trying to teach you how to hunt decently," he meowed. "Today you'll have a chance to show me how much you have learned. Each of you will take a different route and hunt as much prey as possible, and whatever you catch will be added to the supplies in the camp." The three apprentices looked at one another, nervous and excited. Firepaw felt his heart begin to beat faster at the prospect of a challenge. Ravenpaw, you will follow the trail beyond the great sycamore as far as the snake rocks. That would be easy enough for your pitiful skills. You, Greypaw, Tireclaw continued, will take the route along the stream as far as the thunder path. Great, mewed Greypaw. Wet paws for me. Tireclaw's stare silenced him. And finally, you, Firepaw. What a shame your great mentor couldn't be here today to witness your performance for herself. You shall take the route through the tall pines, past the tree-cut place to the woods beyond. Firepaw nodded, frantically tracing the route in his head. And remember, Tireclaw finished, fixing them all with his pale-eyed stare, I will be watching all of you. Ravenpaw was the first to sprint away toward the snake rocks. Tireclaw took a different track into the woods, leaving Greypaw and Firepaw alone in the hollow, trying to guess who Tireclaw would follow first. I don't know why you think snake rocks is an easy route, mewed Greypaw. This place is crawling with adders. Birds and mice stay away from there because there are so many snakes. Ravenpaw will have to spend his whole time trying not to get bitten, Firepaw agreed. Oh, he'll be okay, mewed Greypaw. Not even an adder would be fast enough to catch Ravenpaw at the moment. He's so jumpy, I'd better get going. See you back here later on. Good luck. Greypaw raced off toward the stream. Firepaw paused to sniff the air, then bounded up the side of the hollow, and began to head for the tall pines. It felt strange to be going in this direction, toward the two-leg place he had been raised in. Cautiously, Firepaw crossed the narrow path into the pine forest. He looked through the straight rows of trees, across the flat forest floor, alert for the sight and scent of prey. A movement caught his eye. It was a mouse, scrabbling through the pine needles. Remembering his first lesson, Firepaw dropped into the stalking position, keeping his weight in his haunches, his paws light on the ground. The technique worked perfectly. The mouse didn't detect Firepaw until his final leap. He caught it with one paw and killed it swiftly. Then he buried it, so that he could pick it up on his return journey. Firepaw traveled a little farther into the tall pines. The ground here was deeply rutted by the tracks of the huge two-legged monsters that tore down the trees. Firepaw took a deep breath, his mouth open. The monster's acid breath had not touched the air here for a while. Firepaw followed the deep tracks, jumping across the ruts. They were half filled with rain, which made him feel thirsty. He was tempted to stop and take a few mouthfuls, but he hesitated. One lap of that muddy trench water, and he'd taste the monster's foul-smelling tracks for days. He decided to wait. Perhaps there would be a rainwater puddle beyond the tall pines. He hurried onward through the trees, and crossed the two-leg path on the far boundary. He was back amid the thick undergrowth of oak woods. He moved onward until he found a puddle and lapped up a few mouthfuls of the fresh water. Firepaw's fur began to prickle with some extra awareness. He recognized sounds and scents familiar from his old watching place on the fence post, and knew instantly where he was. They were the woods that bordered the two-leg place. He must be very close to his old home now. Ahead, Firepaw could smell two legs and hear their voices, loud and raucous like crows. It was a group of young two-legs playing in the woods. Firepaw crouched and peered ahead through the ferns. The sounds were distant enough to be safe. He changed direction, skirting the noises, making sure he was not seen. Firepaw stayed alert and watchful, but not just for two legs. Tireclaw might be somewhere nearby. He thought he heard a twig snap in the bushes behind him. He sniffed the air, but smelled nothing new. Was he being watched now, he wondered? Out of the corner of his eye, Firepaw sensed movement. At first he thought it was Tireclaw's dark brown fur, but then he saw a flash of white. He stopped, crouched, and inhaled deeply. The smell was unfamiliar. It was a cat, but not a thundercloud cat. Firepaw felt his fur bristle with the instincts of a clan warrior. He would have to chase the intruder out of ThunderClan territory. Firepaw watched the creature moving through the undergrowth. He could see its outline clearly as it skittered between the ferns. Firepaw waited for it to wander nearer. He crouched lower, his tail waving back and forth in slow rhythm. As the black and white cat neared, Firepaw rocked his haunches from side to side as he prepared to spring. One more heartbeat, then he leaped. The black and white cat jumped onto the air, terrified, and raced away through the trees. Firepaw gave chase. It's a kitty pet, he thought as he raced through the undergrowth, smelling its fierce scent. In my territory. He was closing in rapidly on the fleeing animal. It had slowed its headlong rush, preparing to scramble up the wide, mossy trunk of a fallen tree. With the blood roaring in his ears, Firepaw leaped onto its back in a single bound. Firepaw could feel the cat struggling beneath him as he gripped with all his claws. It let out a desperate and terrified yowl. Firepaw released his grip and backed away. The black and white cat cringed at the foot of the fallen tree, trembling, and looked up at him. Firepaw lifted his nose, feeling a ripple of disgust at the intruder's easy surrender. This soft, plump house cat, with its round eyes and narrow face, looked very different from the lean, broad-headed cats Firepaw lived with now, and yet something about this cat seemed familiar. Firepaw stared harder. He sniffed, drawing in the other cat's scent. I don't recognize the smell, he thought, searching his memory. Then it came to him. Smudge! He meowed out loud. How do you know my name? Stammered Smudge, still crouching. It's me, Firepaw meowed. The house cat looked confused. We were kittens together. I lived in the garden next to you, Firepaw insisted. Rusty? Meowed Smudge in disbelief. Is that you? Did you find the wildcats again? Or are you living with new housefolk? You must be, if you're still alive. I'm called Firepaw now, Firepaw meowed. He relaxed his shoulders and let his fur fall flat into a sleek orange pelt. Smudge relaxed too. His ears perked up. Firepaw, he echoed, amused. Well, Firepaw, it looks like your new housefolk don't feed you enough. You certainly weren't this scrawny last time we met. I don't need 2 legs to feed me, Firepaw replied. I've got a whole forest of food to eat. 2 legs? Housefolk. That's what the clans call them. Smudge looked bewildered for a second. Then his expression changed to one of complete astonishment. You mean you're really living with the wildcats? Yes, Firepaw paused. You know, you smell different, unfamiliar. Unfamiliar? Smudge echoed. He sniffed. I suppose you're used to the smell of those wildcats now. Firepaw shook his head, as if to clear his mind. But we were kittens together. I should know your smell like I'd know the smell of my birth mother. And Firepaw remembered Smudge had passed 6 moons. No wonder he looked so soft and fat, and smelled so strange. You've been to the cutter, he gasped. I mean the vet. Smudge shrugged his plump black shoulders. So, he mewed. Firepaw was speechless. So Blue Star was right. Come on, then. What's it like living wild? Smudge demanded. Is it as good as you thought it'd be? Firepaw thought for a moment about last night, sleeping in a damp den. He thought about mouse pile and clearing away Yellowfang's dirt, trying to please both Lionheart and Tigerclaw once during training. He remembered the teasing he suffered about his kitty pet blood. Then he remembered the thrill of his first catch, of charging through the forest in pursuit of a squirrel, and of warm evenings beneath the stars, sharing tongues with his friends. I know who I am now, he meowed simply. Smudge tipped his head to one side and stared at Firepaw, clearly confused. I should be getting home, he mewed. Meal time soon. Go carefully, Smudge. Firepaw leaned forward and gave his old friend an affectionate lick between the ears. Smudge nuzzled him in return. Stay alert. There may be another cat in the area who is not as fond of kitty pets. House cats, as I am. Smudge's ears flicked nervously at these words. He looked around cautiously and leaped onto the trunk of the fallen tree. Goodbye, Rusty, he mewed. I'll tell everyone at home that you're okay. Bye, Smudge, meowed Firepaw. Enjoy your meal. He watched the white tip of Smudge's tail disappear over the edge of the tree. In the distance he could hear the rattle of dried food being shaken and Two-Leg voice calling. Firepaw turned his tail high, and started back toward his own home, sniffing the air as he went. I'll find a finch or two here, and he decided, then I'll catch something else on the way back, through the pines. He felt bursting with energy after meeting Smudge and realized just how lucky he was to live in the clan. He looked up at the branches above him and began to stalk silently across the forest floor, every sense alert. Now he just needed to impress Bluestar and Tigerclaw, and the day would be perfect.